Have you ever waited to hear something? Just one sentence, just a few simple words, but they never came? Not because the person didn't care, not because they didn't feel it, but because they didn't know how to say it, or maybe they never learned how. I used to wait for those words. I'm proud of you. It sounds simple, easy, something many people hear without even thinking about it. But in my family, those words didn't exist. Not out loud, not directly, not clearly. My father was not a man of many words. He didn't talk about feelings. He didn't give long advice. He didn't sit down for deep conversations. He worked every day, early mornings, late evenings, quietly, consistently, without complaining. That was his way. When I was younger, I didn't think much about it. That was just who he was. That was just how things were. He showed up, he provided, he stayed, and somehow that felt enough. But as I grew older, something inside me started to change. I began to notice other families, friends talking about their parents, sharing stories, laughing about conversations. Some of them would say things like, "My dad told me he's proud of me," or "My parents always support me." And every time I heard that, I would smile, nod, act like I understood. But inside, there was a quiet question. What does that feel like? Not the support. I knew my father supported me in his own way. But the words, the clear, as simple words, I didn't know what that felt like. At first, it didn't bother me much. I told myself, he's just not that kind of person. He shows it differently. That's enough. And maybe it was, but sometimes late at night, when everything was quiet, that small question would come back. Would it really be so hard to say it? Just once? I'm proud of you. I remember one moment very clearly. It was the day I graduated, a big day, an important day, something I had worked toward for years. The ceremony was long, the room was full. People were smiling, taking photos, celebrating. Families were hugging, laughing, saying things to each other that felt warm. I saw fathers placing their hands on their children's shoulders, mothers holding their hands, words being exchanged, words I couldn't hear, but somehow I understood. After the ceremony, I walked toward my family. My mother smiled first. Her eyes were bright. She hugged me. "I'm so happy for you," she said. My father stood next to her, calm, quiet, the same as always. He looked at me, not for long, just a few seconds. Then he nodded, a small nod, and said, "Good." That was it. One word. Simple, short. And then he looked away. Not cold, not distant, just finished. I smiled, because that's what I always did. I told myself, that's his way. That means something. And I believed it. At least, I tried to. But later that night, when everything became quiet again, that same feeling returned. That small, quiet space inside my chest. Not pain, not anger, just something missing. I sat alone, looking at the photos from the day. Everyone looked happy. I looked happy too, and I was. But there was also that question. Why does it still feel like something is missing? I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't want to expect something he had never given. It felt unfair. To him, to myself. So I did what I always did. I pushed the feeling aside. I focused on what I had. A father who worked hard. A father who stayed. A father who never left. That mattered. It really did. But feelings don't always follow logic. They don't always listen to reason. They just stay, quietly, waiting. I never asked him about it. I never said, "Why don't you say it?" Because I already knew the answer. He wouldn't understand the question. Or maybe He wouldn't know how to answer, so I stopped expecting it. Or at least, I told myself I did. Years passed. Life moved on, work, responsibilities, daily routines, and that question slowly became smaller, not gone, but quieter, until one day, something unexpected happened. Not a conversation, not a moment with words, but something even simpler, something so small that I almost didn't notice it at first, but when I did, it changed the way I understood everything. Not just about him, but about what it really means to say something without using words at all. The moment didn't feel important at first. There was no special feeling, no clear sign that something meaningful was about to happen. It was just an ordinary day, quiet, simple, like many days before it. I had come home for the weekend, not for a celebration, not for a big event, just to visit. The house looked the same walls, the same furniture, the same quiet atmosphere that had always been there. My mother was in the kitchen. My father was outside near the small garden. He was fixing something. He was always fixing something. A chair, a broken handle, a small part of the house that needed attention. He didn't say much when I arrived. He just looked up briefly, gave a small nod, and then continued working. That was normal. That was his way. I went inside, put my bag down, and sat for a while, listening to the familiar sounds of the house, dishes in the kitchen, tools outside, soft footsteps, nothing unusual, nothing new. Later in the afternoon, I stepped outside, not because I needed anything, just to be there. He was still working, focused, quiet. His hands moved slowly but steadily, carefully, as if every small detail mattered. I stood there for a moment, watching, not saying anything. He noticed me, but didn't stop. After a few seconds, he said, "Bring that tool." He pointed to something on the ground. I picked it up and handed it to him. "Here," I said. He took it, nodded slightly, then continued. "No, thank you, no extra words. Just the task." I stayed there, not sure why. Maybe I didn't want to go back inside yet. Maybe I was just used to being near him. Like this, quietly, without conversation. After a while, he stopped, looked at the chair he was fixing, moved it slightly, tested it, then said, "Sit." I looked at him. "Me?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes." I sat down carefully. The chair felt stable, strong, better than before. "It's good," I said. He nodded again, then wiped his hand slowly with a cloth. Still no smile, still no long explanation, just quiet satisfaction. We stood there for a moment, no conversation, no questions, just the sound of the wind moving softly through the trees. And then something small happened, something I almost missed. He walked inside for a moment. I stayed outside, sitting in the chair, looking around, not thinking about anything in particular, just present. A few minutes later, he came back, holding something. He placed it next to me, without saying anything. I looked down. It was a small box, old, simple. I recognized it immediately. It was mine. From years ago. I hadn't seen it in a long time. "Where did you find this?" I asked. He shrugged slightly. "It was in the storage room." I opened it slowly. Inside, there were small things, old papers, a few photos, some small objects I had forgotten about, pieces of the past, memories I didn't know were still there. I picked up one of the papers. It was something I had made when I was younger. Not perfect, not special, just something I had created. "I thought you might want it," he said. His voice was calm, neutral, as always. But something felt different. I looked at the box again, then at him. "You kept this?" I asked. He nodded. Yes, that was all. No explanation, no reason. Just, yes. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Very quietly, very slowly, but clearly. He had kept it, all these years, without saying anything, without showing it, without making it known. He had kept it. I looked at the small objects again, each one simple, each one mine. And suddenly, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not in words, not in conversations, but in actions, in small, quiet actions. He noticed, he remembered. He kept things that mattered to me, even when I thought they didn't matter anymore, even when I forgot. He didn't. I closed the box gently. My hands moved slowly, carefully, as if I was holding something fragile, something important. I looked at him again. He was already turning back to his work, adjusting something on the chair, focused, quiet, the same as always. But I saw him differently now, not as someone who didn't say enough, but as someone who expressed things in a way I had never fully understood. I had been waiting for words, clear, direct, simple words. I'm proud of you. But he had never used them, not once. And because of that, I believe something was missing. But maybe nothing was missing. Maybe I was just listening for the wrong language. I stood up slowly, holding the box in my hands. Thank you, I said. He didn't look at me. He just nodded. But this time, that nod felt different. Not small, not distant, but full. Full of something quiet, something steady, something real. And for the first time, I didn't feel that empty space anymore. I didn't feel like something was missing. Because in that small moment, without any big words, without any emotional conversation, I understood something clearly. He had been saying it all along, just not in the way I expected. I carried the box back inside slowly, not because it was heavy, but because it felt meaningful. Each step felt quieter than usual, more aware, as if I was holding something more than just old memories, something I had missed for years, something that had always been there, but hidden in a way I didn't know how to see. I sat down on the edge of my bed and opened the box again, carefully, almost gently, like I didn't want to rush this moment. Inside, everything was simple. Old drawings, small notes, pieces of paper with handwriting that didn't look like mine anymore. Younger, less careful, more honest. I picked up one of the drawings. It wasn't good. Not really. The lines were uneven. The shapes didn't make sense. But I remembered making it, sitting at a table, focused, trying, wanting someone to see it, wanting it to matter. I turned it over. On the back, there was a small date. I didn't remember writing it, but I must have. And suddenly, a quiet thought appeared. He saw this. He kept this. All this time. I put the drawing down and picked up another piece, a small paper with a few words on it. Something I had written, simple, maybe even meaningless at the time, but he kept it. Not because it was important to the world, but because it was important to me. Or maybe it was important to him. I leaned back slightly. The room felt still, calm, and for the first time in a long time, my thoughts weren't loud. They were soft, clear, and something inside me began to shift, slowly, quietly. I realized something I had never truly understood before. I had been measuring his love based on how I expected to receive it, based on what I saw in other people, based on words, expressions, clear signs. But he was never that kind of person, not because he didn't feel deeply, but because he expressed it differently in actions, in consistency, in small, quiet decisions that didn't ask for attention, like keeping a box. For years, without telling anyone, without showing it, without needing recognition, just keeping it. That evening, we had dinner together. Nothing special, no big conversation, but everything felt different to me. I watched him more carefully, not in a strange way, just with new awareness. The way he placed food on the table, the way he made sure everything was ready, the way he sat down quietly without saying much. These were things I had seen all my life, but I had never really noticed them. Not like this. Not with this kind of understanding. At one point, my mother asked me, "How have you been?" I answered normally, "Good." But this time, I added something else. "I've been thinking a lot." She looked at me. "About what?" I paused, then said, "About how people show they care." She smiled slightly. "That's a good thing to think about." I nodded. "Yes, I think so." My father didn't say anything. He just continued eating, quiet, focused, but I didn't feel that distance anymore. Not the way I used to, because now I wasn't waiting for something he couldn't give. I was seeing what he had been giving all along. After dinner, I went outside again. The air was cooler now. The light was softer. Everything felt calm. I stood there for a moment, just breathing. And I thought about all the years I had spent waiting for one sentence, one moment, one clear sign. "I'm proud of you." And I wondered, what if he had said it? What if one day he looked at me and said those exact words? Would it have changed everything? Maybe, maybe not. Because now I understood something deeper. Words are powerful, but they are not the only way to speak. And sometimes actions carry a meaning that words cannot fully hold. I remembered something from earlier, the way he handed me the box, without explanation, without emotion, just giving it to me. That moment said something, not loudly, not clearly, but deeply. It said, "I remember. I care. This mattered." And maybe, in his way, it also said, "I'm proud of you." Not in words, but in presence, in attention, in the quiet decision to keep something for years because it belonged to me. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that understanding settle. It didn't feel dramatic. It didn't feel overwhelming. It felt peaceful, like something finally made sense, like a question I had carried for years had found its answer, not in the way I expected, but in the way I needed. When I opened my eyes again, I saw him outside, standing near the same place as before, looking at something in the garden, fixing something small, adjusting, working, always working. I watched him for a moment, and instead of feeling that quiet distance, I felt something else: respect, understanding, and something even softer: gratitude. Not because he changed, but because I finally saw him clearly, not through expectations, not through comparisons, but as he truly was: a quiet man, a steady man, a man who didn't speak much, but never stopped showing up. And maybe that kind of love doesn't need many words. Maybe it just needs someone willing to see it. The next morning felt unusually calm, not because something big had changed outside, but because something inside me had settled. There was no rush to understand more, no pressure to figure everything out, just a quiet clarity. I woke up early, earlier than usual. The house was still. Soft morning light moved slowly across the walls. Everything felt simple, peaceful. I stepped outside. The air was cool, fresh, and there he was, already awake, already working. He stood near the garden again, holding a small tool, focused as always, steady as always. I watched him for a moment, and I noticed something I had never truly paid attention to before. He never rushed, Not in his movements, not in his work. Everything he did had a quiet rhythm, slow, careful, intentional. Even the smallest task mattered to him, not because it was important to others, but because he chose to do it well. I walked closer, not thinking too much, just moving. He noticed me, of course. He always noticed. But he didn't stop. He just said, "You're up early." His voice was calm, simple. I nodded. Yeah. A short silence followed, but it didn't feel empty. It felt comfortable, like there was no need to fill it. Then, without thinking too much, I said, "Can I help?" He paused, just for a second, then handed me something. "Hold this," he said. I took it. And just like that, I was part of his world, not through conversation, not through explanation, but through action. We worked side by side, quietly, no instructions, no long guidance, just small gestures, a point, a nod, a simple word when needed. And somehow, I understood what to do. Not perfectly, but enough. Time passed slowly, but it didn't feel slow. It felt steady, like we were both moving in the same rhythm, without trying, without forcing anything. At one point, he adjusted something and stepped back, looking at the result. I did the same. It wasn't anything big, just a small repair, something simple. But he looked at it carefully, then gave a small nod. "It's better now," he said. I nodded too. "Yes." Another pause. Then he said something unexpected. "You learn by doing." I looked at him. He wasn't looking at me. He was still looking at the work. But his words stayed with me. You learn by doing. Simple, clear, but deeper than it seemed. Because that's how he lived. He didn't explain things. He showed them. Through actions, through repetition, through quiet consistency. And suddenly, I realized something important. Maybe this was how he had been teaching me all along, not through words, but through example, through presence, through being there, day after day, year after year. I had been waiting for a different kind of teaching, a verbal one, clear instructions, clear praise, clear recognition, but he had chosen another way, a quieter way, a slower way, a way that required attention, not just listening. We finished the work after a while. Nothing special, nothing impressive, but complete. He put the tools down, wiped his hands, then looked at me briefly. Not long, just a moment. And he nodded. That same small nod, the one I had seen so many times before. But this time, it felt different. Not because he changed, but because I did. Because now, I understood what that nod carried. It wasn't just acknowledgement. It wasn't just habit. It was approval, recognition, a quiet form of saying, "That's good. You did well. Maybe even, I see you." And in that moment, I didn't need anything more. I didn't need the words, not anymore. Because I finally understood his language, the language of small actions, of steady presence, of quiet support. Later that day, I sat with him for a short time. We didn't talk much. We never did. But I didn't feel that gap anymore. That space where something felt missing. Because now, I knew it wasn't empty. It was just quiet. And quiet doesn't mean absence. Sometimes, it means depth. At one point, he stood up and went inside, then came back with 2 cups of tea. He handed one to me. No words, just the action. I took it. "Thanks," I said. He nodded. We sat there, drinking slowly, looking at the same space, not speaking, but not distant, just together. And I realized something else. This kind of connection doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be felt. And once you feel it, you don't question it anymore. You don't look for proof. You don't wait for confirmation. You just know. As the day moved forward, everything felt lighter. Not because life had changed, but because my understanding had. Because I stopped expecting something different and started seeing what was already there. That quiet strength, that steady presence, that simple way of saying things without using many words. And maybe that's what made it so real, because it wasn't performed. It wasn't said for effect. It just existed, and it always had. I just needed time and attention to finally see it. The days after that felt different, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that changed everything around me, but in a quiet, steady way that stayed with me. I returned to my usual routine: work, responsibilities, daily life. Everything looked the same from the outside, but inside, something had shifted. I no longer carry that quiet question, that small, persistent feeling of something missing, because now I understood, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to feel at peace with it. There were still moments when I thought about it. Of course there were. Old habits don't disappear instantly. Sometimes, when I saw other people with their families, hearing those clear, direct words, "I'm proud of you," I would pause for a moment, just a moment, and a small part of me would remember what I used to feel, that quiet wondering and that quiet waiting. But now, that feeling didn't stay. It didn't grow. It didn't take over, because I had something else, something real, something I had finally seen for myself. I had understanding, and understanding changes everything. One evening, after a long day, I found myself sitting alone again. The room was quiet, the same kind of quiet that used to bring questions. But this time, it brought reflection. I thought about the box, the small objects inside, the years he had kept them, without saying anything, without showing it, without needing to explain it. And I asked myself something simple. Would I have done the same? Would I have kept those small things for so long? Would I have remembered them, protected them, carried them quietly through the years? I wasn't sure. And that made me realize something even deeper. Love doesn't always look the same. It doesn't follow one pattern. It doesn't use one language. Some people speak it with words, clear, warm, direct. And some people speak it with actions, quiet, steady, unseen. Neither way is wrong. Neither way is less. They are just different. And the problem is not in the way it is given. The problem is in the way it is understood. For years, I had been waiting to hear something, but I hadn't been looking in the right place. I was listening for words when the message was already there, in actions, in presence, in small, consistent choices that didn't ask to be noticed, but were always there. A few days later, I called home, not for any special reason, just to check in. My mother answered first. We talked for a while, in simple things, everyday things. Then she said, "Your father is here." I heard the phone move, then his voice. "Hello." Just one word. Calm, familiar. "Hi," I said. "How are you?" "Good." A short pause. Then he asked, "Work okay?" "Yes," I said. "It's been busy?" He nodded. I could almost feel it through the phone. "That's good." Another pause. In the past, this is where the conversation would end. Short, complete, finished. But this time, it felt different. Not because he said more, but because I understood more. I didn't need him to say anything else. I didn't need to fill the silence. I just stayed there for a moment, present. Then I said, "I helped with the garden last time." He paused, then said, "Yes." And after a second, he added, You did well. 3 simple words. You did well. Not I'm proud of you. Not a long speech. Not emotional. Just that. But it was enough. More than enough. Because I knew what it meant. I could hear it. Not just in the words, but in everything behind them. In the years of quiet support, in the small actions, in the box he had kept, in the way he showed up every single day. I learned from you, I said. There is a short silence. Then he said, good, simple, calm, but complete. We didn't say much more after that. We didn't need to. Because something had already been said, something important, something real. After the call ended, I sat there for a while, holding the phone, thinking, not deeply, not heavily, just feeling the moment. And I realized something I hadn't fully understood until now. Sometimes we spend so much time waiting for the perfect words that we miss the meaning that is already there. We wait for something to be said clearly when it has already been shown quietly. And when we finally understand that, we stop waiting, we stop questioning, we stop feeling like something is missing because we see it, we feel it, we recognize it, not in the way we expected, but in the way it has always existed. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. The world outside looked the same. Nothing had changed, but I felt different. Not because I received something new, but because I understood something old, something that had been there all along. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to hear those words anymore. I'm proud of you, because in his own quiet way, he had already said it. Again and again, for years, through every action, through every moment he showed up, through every small thing he chose to keep. And maybe that kind of love, the quiet kind, the steady kind, the kind that doesn't always speak loudly, is the kind that stays the longest, the kind that doesn't need to be repeated. Because once you understand it, you carry it with you, everywhere. Thank you for listening. If this story felt familiar to you, if you've ever waited for words that never came, maybe this is your moment to look again, to see what has always been there, to understand it in a new way, and to realize that sometimes the most meaningful things are not the ones we hear, but the ones we finally learn to see. If you'd like to keep learning English through calm and meaningful stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I'll see you in the next story.